comes to doing business in Africa, we have met like a lot of people today, like GIZ and other support organizations, AWS, but what we love to do to end this day up is to uncover how these particular organizations can actually unlock more and more startup access, and which role they can and should play to help African founders to better position their businesses, get more opportunities, and hopefully this message comes across today, also help African founders to come to Europe so that we can bridge that trust gap, that more people can be met in person. So I'm looking forward to unpacking this today. So let's welcome our panelists, Nathaniel, Marcel, Chiza, Sebastian, and Ida.
Testing? Yes, there we go. We have made it to the final panel. To everyone online and offline, thank you for still being here. It has been a long day, but I have to say I have been very positively surprised. The quality of the people that we have here, talking about trust, how we can collaborate, it really feels like a family. People who are coming together to figure out solutions to these problems, because as has been said so many times, we cannot solve these problems alone. We need to collaborate if we really want to make an impact. And as the last bit today, we're going to be talking about support organizations, the role of those, and maybe what are some of the challenges and how we could be working together to solve them. And let me give you one reason for why you should still pay attention to this. Why you should still be awake at this very late hour is because startup support organizations play a really important role in catalyzing some of that change. Where it all starts with collaboration is bringing people together. And that's usually the role that startup support organizations take. They're the ones organizing events such as this one, and that's why they need to be involved in having those conversations. And I have a very, very cool panel here with me. Let me shortly introduce them, as well as something cool about them. Starting off over there, Nathaniel, very cool about him is because he organized this and he just flew in from Cape Town. Introduce yourself briefly.
So hi everybody, my name is Nathaniel Witboy. I am the Program and Business Development Lead for Africarena. Essentially, beyond this event, our main mandate is to try and connect as many startups to as many VCs and just help ecosystem build this amazing continent, which we believe will be the future of the world. So we really look forward to sharing that with you.
Thank you. What's super cool about Sebastian is how passionate he is about circular economy and sustainable change on an ecosystem level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we need to think about beyond sustainability, because we all know we exploit our planet, yeah, and this cannot move on. Yeah, so we have to think about how to really use the force of human beings and nature together to build a future economy. That's why I'm really interested in the topic of regenerative economies. And this is also what we try to do, yeah, to build with Motherland, yeah, empowering the communities really to live up to their full potential and also becoming able to participate in the market.
Thank you. Next up, Marcel. What struck me about you was how passionately you spoke about the importance of transparent and measurable impact, as well as the importance of grassroots initiatives.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Is it? Test? Yes, you can hear me. Yeah, I co-founded 8 Pioneers in 2020, and 8 Pioneers started with the vision that development aid is, in the traditional design, is failing in the long run because it's quite often developed in rooms like this, in Berlin, in New York, where people design solutions and they don't have the connection to the local people in the field. So when you mention grassroots organizations, that's what 8 Pioneers is looking for. So we look for the very, very promising nonprofits that fight poverty in a very good way. We help them to measure their impact so that they become scalable for large donors in Europe or America. And then we match them to these organizations so that donors in Europe or in America can have more impact by supporting local grassroots organizations instead of giving money to large government organizations that use traditional approaches that come top down and that trickle down somewhere, but quite often not create impact in the long run.
Thanks, Marcel. And then we have Chiedza. And what is cool about her is her commitment to diversity and a human-centric approach, as well as all the insights from the southern part of the continent.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me, Nathaniel. So I'm Zimbabwean, yeah, I've lived in Zimbabwe, I've lived in the UK, and I've also been living in Germany now for 6 years. I can't believe it. So it's having different experiences in the different places, which I think has been really great for me in terms of just exposure to so many different cultures and the digital world and how it manifests itself in different places. So yes.
Thank you for being here. And really shortly, for those who I have not met before, my name is Ida, and I'm here representing the Vestavele Foundation. We're a startup support organization focusing on empowering entrepreneurs in emerging markets with a focus on Africa. And how do we do that? We have startup hubs in different countries, and we really believe in an African-led approach. We have amazing teams currently in Kigali in Rwanda, Arusha, Tanzania, as well as Tunis, Tunisia, and we're also looking to expand into new countries. You might hear some cool news from us very soon. And I love this topic. So let's dive into the actual questions. The first thing I'd like to ask you is, are startup support organizations, ESOs, currently effective in Africa, and where are the bottlenecks in the ecosystem? And considering the ecosystem approach, I'm looking over there first. Maybe Nathaniel, what are your thoughts?
So, I mean, if we take a look at the African market at the moment, you'll start to realize that we are still an incredibly nascent market. Still very young. There hasn't been a lot of exits happening on the continent. There hasn't been a lot of unicorns. I mean, there's probably a handful between 11, maybe 12 now that have actually risen to the occasion. When you think about bottleneck, and ESO is obviously playing mostly within the early stages, from pre-seed to seed stages. I would say one of the biggest pain points that we as ecosystem builders actually see in the continent is the fact that I feel like there's a lot of decentralization when it comes to ecosystem support organizations. There's an underlining value of competition, certain players playing together, and then also if you take a look at the content and what we're actually providing and the services that we're giving to startups, I don't believe that a lot of them are actually bringing what is valuable to the table. I think those would be my two inputs. Rather not take too much time.
What about Sebastian?
So from my experience, ecosystem building takes a long, long time. Yeah, so I think it's always good to be ambitious and do the right things. But as we also heard, it's also a lot about seeing the first startup successes. Yeah, because those startup successes will bring the returns that will be then again will be invested into the startups. And when I look back, I'm in Berlin since 2008. Yeah, and that was also a nascent ecosystem, right? And today it looks completely different. And it just took time and a lot of players that collaborated and really asked what they can do for the ecosystem before they ask what the ecosystem can do for me. And I think there are a lot of players that try to squeeze out ecosystems that are nascent, that are unstable, yeah, because they want to get their fair share out of that. And what we need to do and see is really investment into the ecosystems in a non-linear fashion. So that means having this kind of events and supporting startups, etc., etc. And I think we have plays a major role in it, because it's always different than hanging just around in Zoom calls, and bringing really also startups together to collaborate. Because especially what I've learned working with startups in Africa, there's always an issue with market making. Yeah, because the markets are also very nascent, and when you found a startup here, you can be laser focused because all the other services that you need to run a startup are already there. And I think, therefore, to really accelerate the development of such ecosystems, it will be required to also see collaboration between the startups, so that the startups don't have to do all and everything. Yeah, because then they can have this handshake, what we try to realize with Motherland.
Very, very interesting, super high-level ecosystem insights. What about from your perspective?
I think the answer that many people would expect now is that money is the issue. And for me, coming from the philanthropic area, I can say money is not the issue. There's a lot of money there. Just the way how we allocate money might be an issue. And the answer maybe to many questions today that were raised from traditional venture capitalists is, where do we get money from? I can tell you there is money on the philanthropic side. that is just invested in the wrong way because it's just donated to organizations that are nearby, to a nearby church, for example, or to your local charity organization, without thinking about what the impact actually is of the money. And let me ask the question to the crowd. Maybe someone can raise his hand and can tell me how much money every year goes as donations to Africa every single year from worldwide. What do you think? Maybe just a number. Just scream it in the room. A guess. Donations every year from the world to Africa. Private donations, roughly 50 billion every year. How much development money comes from government players every year? Roughly the same number. So 100 billion that is placed on Africa, it's a massive sum of money that is going into very, very important projects, for example, fighting hunger. But a portion of that money could also go into venture capital areas, into companies that look for funding. But the prerequisite for that is that you are able to measure impact. If you can't prove your theory of change, if you can't prove that your organization, a startup, is creating impact, you won't access money from philanthropic areas. So maybe that's one of the things that I see is a bottleneck, cooperation between philanthropic areas and venture capital part.
What about you?
I'm going to say something controversial, so I'm sorry, first of all.
No, we love that. We love controversial. Don't apologize.
So I think that I'll look, for example, at when we had COVID and the rules were do social distancing, all of these things. And these things came from a very Western perspective where you could isolate, you could stay at home and do all these things. And I think when we define success, we're defining success based on the Western criteria of success. But how can you strive to have the same numbers when you have totally different circumstances? I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's possible, that we have to have the same number of like exits and unicorns because we don't have a lot of in some countries, I'm talking from my perspective from Zimbabwe, we don't have some very basic things that you would never have to deal with if you're in Germany. So of course, Germany can spin off a ton of unicorns because you always have power, right? If power goes out, it's something really serious. But in Zimbabwe, this is a problem that is happening every single day. So what chance do you actually have to have a unicorn, $1 billion company? Maybe our version of success should be it's 100K. I don't know what that is, but I think a lot of it is trying to fit your context in one that doesn't match to yours. And I think the second one is when I lived in the UK, so this was about maybe 20 years ago, they made, as a government, a very concerted effort to build sort of their digital tech capabilities. So I think to also be successful, the government has to be fully on board and fully supportive to then enable all of these ecosystem organizations, because let's face it, these are some of the biggest players and the biggest influencers. So I think until it's right at the top of a government's agenda, again, because it's all about regulation, it's all about giving space, it's all about competition, it's all about the law, to give people more room to play, more room to experiment. And if you're sort of dealing with, economic issues, infrastructure issues, it's not going to be at the top of a government's agenda.
Thank you so much. This was a lot to unpack. We went in the direction of, okay, how do we determine success? We started off by talking about how the ecosystem was still nascent, we're still in the beginning, but on the other hand, what Sebastian said is it could develop pretty fast. Or no, it's a long-term thing, but it could develop to really cool heights like we've seen here in Berlin. And then on the other hand, that there is a lot of philanthropic money that is there, but we're just not sure how to use that. And from your side, how the models are maybe also different, considering that the success metrics are different. So I think one thing that combines a lot of these is that collaboration is needed, both between the support organizations as well as the founders, as well as in between different support organizations, as well as in between support organizations and investors. And earlier we spoke with Nathaniel, and he had very strong views about how the collaboration is currently going with support organizations and investors. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit before we talk about the relationship between the founders and the support organizations.
100%. I feel that what really happens with your journey as a startup once you've finished with an accelerator program or with an incubator program? I feel like there's a continuity issue because we're not creating sustainable pipelines. Like, for instance, if when we're finished accelerating a startup, the next step the natural next step would be like, let's connect you to investors, because we are confidently sure that you are now ready to raise funds. Where I feel where most of the other startups that go through some ESOs, like they just kind of just fall to the wayside. They're like, okay, cool, we've got our knowledge, we know what we're going to do, but what's the next steps? They're kind of super lost. I mean, and a lot of investors should be aware that in between investors from, let's say, seed up until like Series A, Series B, they have this thing called circle of investors, where they do deals with each other. They know that, cool, once my seed is done with one venture firm, I can then go to a DFI for my Series A, Series B, and we prefer startups from this organization going to there. Why can we not do the same thing with ESOs? Like for instance, if you've been accelerated by your foundation or by Africa Arena or any of the other organizations, what's the natural next step? Because we have focuses. And I feel the problem is that a lot of ESOs are also just kind of not focusing their coursework or what type of startups they're looking at. And everybody's going way too broad. And I think in Africa specifically, in the next 2 to 3 years, we really need to start moving into more sector-focused, orientated work rather than being sector agnostic. Because honestly, in mind my French, I feel like this is an absolute BS term. No one is truly sector agnostic in this industry, right?
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And I have to say, normally I don't speak that openly or complain, but sometimes I look at what certain support organizations are doing, and I'm like, wow, they have all this funding and this is what they're doing. What are the real results? And what could we do with this if we as an ecosystem looked at what are the strengths of each organization and focused on that to deliver actual results instead of just another standard program because, well, we have money, so let's just spend it on this thing.
So to build on that, I fully agree. I think we see not the amount of programs that we see that targeting startups in Africa is immense. The question is, are they effective?
Exactly.
Yeah, and is the money well invested? And when we started Motherland, we first tried to understand what are the real challenges and opportunities in Africa. Yeah, and not coming with from the Western side and saying, okay, we want to see development in that area, and now let's do something. Yeah, and that is really on our agenda. Yeah, but being humble and talking to the people and listening. Yeah, and what we figured out is that one challenge of all those startups is the defocus. Yeah, and really are not able to create a viable business because they have to deal with so many challenges at once. Yeah, and that's why we came up then with the solution by talking to many startups, saying, okay, maybe we can help you with that. Yeah, being this independent orchestrator, helping you to solve the challenge and create business very, very rapidly. And then you have also the KPIs and then bridging this gap between investors, because investors want to see really the hockey stick business cases. And I understand that because I did that also for more than 10 years. But coming from the philanthropic and from the governmental funding side, they don't care so much, right, about the impact. And I think I just have shown a little bit about what impact is possible. Yeah, and these are really numbers. Yeah, and I think we have to go way deeper into that, reducing cost structures and look more for impact. And then there's, like you said, there's plenty enough money. We just have to do it in the right way and then doing it really in the favor of the development of startups that create businesses, etc. in the future. And then the flywheel will start rolling and massively.
Thanks, Sebastian. I think that was a perfect bridge to looking at the founder perspective. What do founders really need and what's the most valuable part of the curriculum? Maybe asking from Chietza, because I know you have a hard stop. It's 44 now, so you need to go soon. But a question for you. What do you think are the most important, valuable parts of a startup support curriculum, as well as the format in which it's done? Earlier we spoke a bit about equity deals and how that might or might not work in that context.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think just sort of the equity part, I think you have to say the context of where this is happening. And if you are in a super functional economy and someone says, I'll give you half salary, half equity, that's probably not too bad. But if you have yourself, your family, extended family that you might be looking after, this might not be a viable option for you. So it might not be viable for you to say, it's because it's a bet, right? It's not all the time that you have shares and you get paid out of those shares. that actually happens very seldom. So I think when we think about the package equity, I'm not 100% convinced that this works in the context of and like I said, I'm speaking really from a Zimbabwean perspective. I think that it's not such a viable sort of way to compensate someone. In terms of the curriculum, I mean, I work in product management, and I always find it so interesting how people over-index on sort of technical skills, like, can you, write amazing documentation? But actually what makes a brilliant product manager is probably what is quite similar to a brilliant founder. It's all about the human skills. Like, it's all about the communication, understanding like how to collaborate with people, how to get your message across, how to ask for what you want, and also how to express the value of what you are building, how to deal when people are asking you lots of challenging questions, and dealing with people left, right. You've got your investors, you've got your stakeholders, you've got people in the team. How do you manage to balance all of those things out? And also on relationships, and I think someone talked about focus, right? This is something that I know a lot of founders really struggle with, and it's really focus, exactly what, as product managers, we're just drowning all the time. So I think really sort of looking a lot more at the human side of things. And yes, I think it's good, you must know your financial models. Yes, that's great. And your KPIs and all that stuff. But as a human being, how are you communicating? How are you collaborating? And how are you actually making sure that you're bringing the right people to the table? And also, who are your sounding boards? I think all of these things I think even in business, we don't talk a lot about all of these like more, I don't know, like maybe things that make us more vulnerable, that make us more human, because I think when you have those things, you can just be so brilliant at so many things.
Oh, I love what you're saying. And I feel like this is actually a trend that's not only happening in Africa, but in general around the world, with startup programs becoming a lot less focused on the technical skills and the business model canvas, because we can find that online. And it's a lot more about developing the individuals to have the leadership skills and the skills to pivot when needed, and becoming serial entrepreneurs, creating impact all along their lives instead of just with one business. What have you seen working with your impact ventures through 8 Pioneers?
Yeah, I would say that it's connecting people. And when Michel said at the beginning of the event that we are all a family, I asked myself, how often do I text my brother? And it's quite often. And I send him quite often a link of something. And if we are a family, I would ask all of you to share stuff that you see. If you see that there is an event of Africa Arena, share it with the people. Make your comment under that post on LinkedIn. Spread it to the world and let people know that there's something existing. I do the same every week. I comment quite often people under random posts, and I'm the lonely ranger in the comments areas, commenting a lot of names. But by doing so, I'm raising the awareness that this program exists. And quite often, it's just, I'm surprised about the fact how, and don't bear with me, but I'm surprised about the fact that some members here don't know about those well-known programs in philanthropic areas that everyone should at least have heard about once, to then recommend the startups to join these programs. GIZ is here. You can, if you have an agriculture startup, you should always talk to Philip and join the program. Why don't you do this? It's just free access, and they support you with your organization. And for that reason, I would always say, comment on these LinkedIn posts, make that word loud, and also, tag Mikkel, and he knows a lot of people, and he will tag again, and that is creating a family. And then again, next year when we meet here, we will have a full room crowded of people, just because we're creating a family with connections.
I love the action orientation. Who knows where we're going to be next year when we're all going to be collaborating throughout this year. We're slowly running out of time, so maybe we can do one more question with quick answers. Quick answers, everyone. So considering that we talked about what are the most important benefits, equity model might or might not work, especially for early stage founders, we need collaboration. What would be an ideal support organization program from the founder and collaboration perspective? What do you want to see happening?
Well, especially from my side, I think something that we've started doing is 3 things. So one, we have our organization called Digital Collective Africa. So we've, like all the resources you say you can find online, we've put together a collective of organizations where we've now put all like capitalization tables, everything that a startup needs just to actually start and launch, and everything they might require as they scale through their process, is all on that platform. So like we've kind of conduced that information into one space. The second thing that we've also done is that we've created a space for founders to actually create a forum. So I think the biggest issue that we have is that, I mean, startups face things like, for instance, in Tunisia, fintech is a terrible space to try and scale a startup because it's regulated. I was having a conversation with a startup who said, yes, I first need to pay $1 million before I can even be licensed to start my startup in the, in the space. It's kind of wild. But it's like these little toolkits that are being created by founders, for founders, to fast-track other founders' success in those ecosystems. So I think that's like one of the coolest things that we could actually do is share those type of experiences so people can follow in those people's footsteps.
By founders, for founders, something valuable. Sebastian.
So from my experience, and Philip was already mentioned, working together with organizations and people that are able really to help you and boost your development. So that can be network, but also when I'm looking back, I worked a lot in corporate startup collaboration, so bringing startups and corporates together. It was always a lot about making easy deals that work for the startup and start working as quick as possible. And I think if we learn that from governmental funding, for example, or from other donations, just not talk and write large proposals, but just really get off the ground, do something that is probably in the end way more cheaper, also for the organization that has to read all the applications, etc., just do. And then measure the KPIs, select the ones that are really delivering, and then move on. Go out of the building and do. And I think a lot what you are talking about is making this money accessible. Because otherwise it's just poof.
Thank you, Sebastian. And GIZ is here listening in as well.
No, perfect answer. Nothing to add. Maybe next question. That was everything I had to say. So.
Perfect. What about Chietza?
I mean, I don't think I can add much more, but I think this exchange, this human exchange, so I know that, I have a lot of exchanges with other people who do a similar job to me, and it's like therapy, someone who really understands what you're going through, what you're experiencing, and you get so many ideas. So I think sometimes we always think a solution has to be this like massive thing, but it could be like a LinkedIn group, it could be even like a WhatsApp group or Signal group for the WhatsApp haters. Where you can just exchange ideas or meet up every so often to talk about different challenges. And I think those are the things that make a huge difference to people.
Yeah, that's really true. That's actually also what we usually hear from our founders that participate in the programs. Like, what have been some of the most valuable things? And they say it's the peer support, especially the founders that don't come from this startup circle, and they might be building startups in remote areas. They don't have role models or support around them, and then just that conversation with someone around the world who's building something similar, it opens their eyes. And because of that, they start dreaming bigger, and because of that, they take more risks, and they become the role models in their own communities, and that's how we're slowly lifting up the level in all of those ecosystems. Cool. Do we have time for like 1 or 2 questions? Does anyone still have energy for anything they'd like to ask? See a lot of smiling faces, at least you're listening. I guess we're all ready to end this on this very positive note of collaboration. Michelle is coming here. Yes?
No questions.
No questions?
Are we done? Have we learned enough today?
I've learned enough. I've learned so much today. Then we're going to say thank you. Thank you for putting this together.
And maybe one thing, we should have a loud applause for Michelle for organizing the event.
Yes.
Time for that.
Thank you. I mean, this has been a massive collaborative effort. I think there's no one individual that can be pointed out here. As we said earlier, in the true fashion of Ubuntu, from South Africa, I am because we are. And I mean, all the participants who have been here today, being it as panelists, being it as the audience, and being it as the amazing people behind the scenes between the continents who, over endless hours and summit after summit, keep producing these events to showcase the potential of the continent. And I think I'm very, very, very proud and excited to have had this first show up in the Berlin ecosystem, and like it's just like. You can't imagine, like, especially how important it is to have these people who pull all the strings behind the scenes, so that we can all stand here today and present this to you and engage with you. And I'm nothing but grateful for this first initiative to bridge more gaps between the continents, to connect the dots. And I think on behalf of the Thai team, please also a big applause for Christoph, the founder of Africa Arena.
Yeah, so I think it's hot, it's late, but we had a great day. So as Michel mentioned, first of all, I would like to thank you, Michel, and the Counter team, Sasha, for the support and being fantastic hosts for us. We couldn't have done this in Berlin without you. And of course, the Africa Arena team here, so Nathaniel.
Big applause for this man.
Noise for Nathaniel. Noah, who is, can you come on stage, Noah? Noah has been working on the content. Kim at the back there. And then the rest of our team in Cape Town. Hey guys.
Hey.
Thank you, Jabulile, Dan, and the entire team working on the online streaming. Thanks to the technical team at the back there. I know you can hear us. Thank you. It was a very good performance online. And thanks to all the people that supported the event, speakers, startups, pitching, you guys for showing up and staying until the very end. Now we really would love to host you at one of our next events. So Nairobi, Tunis, September, October. Hopefully, we work with GIZ in Tunis very well. Hopefully, work with them in Nairobi, and of course Cape Town, not to be missed, early December. Alongside Super Return Africa, that's going to be a not-to-be-missed event. We have a lot of side events around that. That's our biggest event of the year, and this is the best time to visit South Africa, right, Michel? So we're looking forward to see you there.
It's prime time. I can tell you, a lot of Berlin folks have figured that out by now, because we see them there every year, and I can't wait for that event as well. Maybe
We also have the volunteers that helped us. I don't know if they can hear us. You want to come on stage and just show your face?
Please come
We're
on.
going to do a little group pictures of the team. Well done, guys.
And I even think, Christoph, what do you think? Should we do a picture with everyone who's still here?
Everyone's
If you
still
guys are
standing.
keen and want to come up, let's do this picture as we're talking about family. So everyone who is keen, please all make the way up.
Yeah.
We take.
This is called the audience selfie.
Love this. Ubuntu! Hey! Amazing. We make sure that picture will be shared. We'll tag as many people as
See
we
you next
can.
year.
Yeah. Good work.